What's up, movie fans? Guys, a few months ago, I did my first ever director filmography ranking on my channel when I ranked all 20 Tim Burton movies. And I had a lot of fun doing that ranking, so I'm planning on doing a lot of director filmography rankings in the future. And for my second one, I wanted to do Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is an absolutely legendary director who is very popular and has a lot of fans, but I actually had never seen a single one of his movies prior to starting this ranking. So I watched through all 13 Wes Anderson movies for the first time, and I absolutely loved this experience. Wes Anderson is now easily one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and I'm sorry, Tim Burton fans, but after watching all of both of their movies, he's definitely a better director than Tim Burton. I'm sorry, I just have to admit that. But Wes Anderson is just a director who has a very distinct style to all of his movies. He's known for having incredibly sharp, witty, fast dialogue, very vibrant color schemes, and overly saturated movies. He's known for having very distinct camera shots and having a lot of wide angles and stuff in all of his movies. And he is known for having a rotating cast of people who just keep on recurring throughout all of his movies. You know how Tim Burton had a few actors who appeared in a ton of his movies, like Johnny Depp or Helena Bonham Carter? Well, Wes Anderson has that, but turned up to the next level. If you appear in a Wes Anderson movie and he likes working with you, you're pretty much in all of the rest of his movies for the rest of eternity. He has so many actors who just keep on appearing throughout his movies, most notably Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Jason Schwartzman, Adrian Brody, Jeff Goldblum, Willem Dafoe, Edward Norton, Angelica Houston, Tilda Swinton. More recently, actors like Bryan Cranston, Benedict Cumberbatch, Benicio del Toro, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, and the king of them all, Bill Murray. For reference, Johnny Depp appeared in 8 of Tim Burton's 20 movies. Bill Murray appears in 10 of Wes Anderson's 13 movies. Wes Anderson loves working with that man. Anyway, that's enough introducing the video. Let's get into the list already, starting with number 13. Okay, before I get into this list, I want to clarify something. I actually like all of these movies. This list was very hard to make because I genuinely mean it when I say I don't think Wes Anderson has made a single bad movie. However, there were 2 that I watched that I thought were just okay. And one of those 2, my least favorite, is Isle of Dogs. This is one of Wes Anderson's most popular films. It's one of 2 stop-motion movies that Wes Anderson has made, and I liked it for the most part, but there were just some things about this movie that I really didn't care for. The plot of this movie is it takes place in Japan, and it takes place in this weird dystopian future where essentially all of the dogs in Japan got some kind of illness, and the humans are worried that the illness is going to spread to them. So they banish all dogs to an isle of trash in the middle of the ocean. And the plot of the film centers around a young boy who goes out to this isle and teams up with a group of stray dogs to try and find his own dog who was sent to the island. I actually did enjoy everything in this movie involving the main group of dogs and the kids. I liked all of that stuff. I thought that it was fun, whimsical. I liked all of the dogs. I thought they were all pretty funny. My favorite was the one that was voiced by Jeff Goldblum, who throughout the movie kept sharing all of the gossip that's going on in Dog World, and I thought that was a very funny recurring joke. And then the emotional core of the movie centers around the main dog, who is voiced by Bryan Cranston, forming a connection with this boy. And Bryan Cranston is like this stray dog who's been neglected his whole life, and as a result, he doesn't really like humans, but he forms like this very deep bond with the boy, and I actually thought that was a very effective emotional core. The problem with this movie is its subplot. Isle of Dogs focuses a lot on this subplot involving this foreign exchange student American girl voiced by Greta Gerwig, and it basically centers around her learning that the leader of Japan actually is lying about the dogs being sick and they can cure the disease, and he's just trying to spread propaganda about dogs being bad to hide his own actions. This movie has like very, very strong anti-propaganda messaging. It's not really subtle about that, and I like that. But I think at a certain point, it kind of takes over the movie. In the third act of this film, it focuses way more on the Greta Gerwig girl than the actual main characters that we've been following the whole movie. And I thought that that was a very misguided choice. Also, the dictator of Japan, who's kind of the villain of this movie, has this weird redemption arc in the third act that felt like it came out of nowhere. So, yeah, I liked a lot of things about Isle of Dogs, but that entire subplot brought the movie down to the bottom of the list, unfortunately. Number 12, another one of Wes Anderson's most recent movies, Asteroid City. This is by far the most abstract and odd movie that Wes Anderson has ever made. The plot of the movie is kind of hard to describe because essentially you're watching the production of a play. The whole movie has this gimmick where it keeps cutting behind the scenes of the play, and Bryan Cranston is narrating over the creation of the play, and you're following the writer of the play, who's played by Edward Norton, and all of the actors in the play. But the main plot line of the movie is the actual play itself, and it kind of keeps cutting between those two things, and so it's a very abstract and odd movie. It is a movie where I very much respected the ambitions of what it was going for, but it was also a movie that got very, very complex in its messaging to the point that I kind of thought it was confusing. I hate to say it, but the reason why Asteroid City is this low on the list is because I simply didn't get what it was trying to say. And I don't know if that's my fault or if it's Wes Anderson's fault. I really don't. I feel like I have to re-watch Asteroid City at some point in my life. Behind the scenes in the plotline about the production of the play, it's trying to say all of these things about storytelling and how sometimes stories don't really have to make sense. Sometimes a writer will just add things into a story because he wants to see how the audience will interpret it. And I liked that stuff, But then in the play itself, we're exploring all of these themes about grief and moving on from grief, and like Jason Schwartzman is mourning his dead wife, and that's a big part of the movie. And I just really wasn't sure what it was trying to say about grief. It got just very, very confusing and convoluted to me. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of Asteroid City either. Once again, I respect the ambitions. It just didn't really work for me. Alright, those are the two Wes Anderson movies that I think are just okay. So moving on from here, the top 11 are all movies that I like. Starting off with number 11, Wes Anderson's first ever movie, Bottle Rocket. I thought Bottle Rocket was a pretty fun comedy movie. This movie is about two amateur criminals played by Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson, and they're trying to pull off a big heist. That is the entire premise of the movie, and I thought it was a very fun, small-scale crime comedy movie about these two amateur criminals who are very, very incompetent. I thought that Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson were the thing that carried this movie. The two of them were so funny together in this movie. Owen Wilson is kind of the weird one who comes up with all of these ridiculous schemes that are just terrible, and Luke Wilson is the straight man who knows that all of Owen Wilson's schemes are stupid, but doesn't have the heart to tell him. And I thought that the movie was just very, very funny, very fun, very energetic. I don't love it as much as Wes Anderson's other films because you can tell that this was early in his career. It does get pretty slow at times, and it's just not as stylized or as pretty to look at as Wes Anderson's other works, but still, I had some fun with Bottle Rocket. I recommend it. It's just not one of my favorites. Number 10. Alright, this is another one where I think I'm going to make some enemies here because this is one of Wes Anderson's most beloved movies. Once again, this is all just my opinion. I'm sorry, I like all of these movies. But at number 10, I have Moonrise Kingdom. This is a movie that I did think was very, very cute. The plot of this movie essentially centers around these two kids who feel like outcasts. The one boy is a member of the Boy Scouts, but all of the other Boy Scout members bully him, and he also is a part of a foster family, and he doesn't feel like he fits in there. And then the girl doesn't feel like she fits in with her family. She feels very misunderstood by her parents, and these two kids meet each other, fall in love, and then run away. And the movie is all about the kids having this very whimsical, fun adventure while all of the adults in their lives are trying to find them. And I thought pretty much everything involving the kids was very, very cute. This is a very adorable, wholesome movie. I really enjoyed the two kids together. I thought they were very funny together, very fun. Like, I enjoyed all of the little kid romance stuff. It was a fun, wholesome story. I didn't like the adult stuff. I thought every time the movie cut back to the adults, it just became so boring. I liked the scout leader played by Edward Norton. He was fun. Pretty much everybody else I thought was just boring. Like, you're following the town sheriff who's played by Bruce Willis. I didn't really care for his character. I didn't care for the girl's parents played by Bill Murray and Frances McDormand. Like, I don't know. I just didn't find them to be interesting, and I thought that they all dragged the movie down a lot, especially as you get into the second half of the movie and it starts focusing on them way more. more. So yeah, for the most part, I still found Moonrise Kingdom to be a very adorable movie. I just didn't really like the adult plot lines. Alright, number 9. This is a little bit of a weird one. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and Three More. So, the thing about this movie is it's not technically a movie. This is actually a collection of short films that Wes Anderson made for Netflix, and they were just edited together into a movie later after one of the short films won an Oscar. So it's not technically a movie, it's more of just a compilation of short films. But I did watch it as a movie. It is technically a feature-length film that Wes Anderson has made. So it's on the list, and I really enjoyed it. I thought The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar was just a very fun collection of short films. They're all based on books by Roald Dahl, who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Fantastic Mr. Fox, a whole bunch of other children's books. And he wrote a ton of short stories for adults, and that is what The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is. They're very, very interesting in their presentation because the movie essentially presents them as plays that are happening on a stage, and you're just like watching a very high quality filmed version of the play, and I thought that that was really interesting and unique. My favorite of the short films was the last one, Poison. That one was so much fun. It was so tense. I just really enjoyed these short films. Don't really have a lot more to say than that. Number 8, Wes Anderson's newest movie, The Phoenician Scheme. The Phoenician Scheme is interesting to me because this movie has actually gotten a lot of criticism since it came out last year. A ton of people have been saying that this movie leans in a little bit too much to Wes Anderson's style and doesn't really leave a lot of room for substance. A lot of people have been criticizing the movie for just having characters who are too robotic and saying that it feels like self-parody. And I completely disagree with all of that. I really, really enjoyed The Phoenician Scheme. I thought that this movie was a very, very fun, absurdist comedy movie. It's all about Benicio del Toro, who is playing like this very eccentric con man, and he realizes that he's probably going to die soon because there's a lot of assassins who want to kill him, and so he decides to pull off one more big heist before leaving all of his inheritance to his daughter, who is a nun. And I thought that the movie was just very, very fun, as it's just following Benicio del Toro pulling off this absurd scheme. It is very, very funny at times. There were a ton of running jokes that I just thought were absolutely hilarious. In particular, Benicio del Toro giving all of his investors hand grenades and them all acting like that is a completely normal thing for him to do. Michael Cera plays a big role in this movie. This is the first ever Wes Anderson movie to feature Michael Cera, and that's just a match made in heaven. He was a ton of fun here. And the movie does have a little bit of an emotional core to it that I thought worked, as the movie is all about Benicio del Toro kind of reconnecting with his daughter, realizing that he's been absent in her life, realizing that he has kind of been a terrible person for his whole life, and it's all about him kind of changing over the course of the film. And I actually thought that that really, really worked for me. I wouldn't say it's as emotional or as interesting as a lot of Wes Anderson's other movies, in particular because Yeah, I'll admit sometimes the characters are a little bit too robotic in this movie, but still, I really enjoyed the Phoenician scheme. And also, look up a picture of what Benedict Cumberbatch looks like in this movie because it is the funniest image of all time. Number 7, we're going from one of Wes Anderson's funniest movies to one of his more subdued and emotional movies, The Darjeeling Limited. This is a movie all about three brothers played by Wes Anderson's regulars, Owen Wilson, Jason Schwartzman, and Adrian Brody, reuniting after a year of being separated after their father died, and it is about them kind of going on this spiritual journey through India on a train to kind of reconnect with each other. And the one brother, Owen Wilson, secretly has a plan to end the trip by reuniting the three of them with their mother, who they also haven't seen in a very long time. I really liked The Darjeeling Limited. I thought that this was one of Wes Anderson's most emotionally powerful films. Something that you're going to see a lot of throughout this list. I already kind of mentioned it with the Phoenician scheme. Wes Anderson loves making movies about estranged family members coming back together and kind of growing to care about each other again. And I think The Darjeeling Limited is a story where that theme is very present and it's very powerful. I enjoyed all three of the brothers in this movie. I thought that they were all very funny when they needed to be and very sincere when they needed to be. My favorite of the three is probably Jason Schwartzman. I thought he was the funniest in this movie. I really liked the hijinks that the brothers get up to on this train, and then I really liked the more emotional moments that the movie goes for. There's one sequence involving pepper spray that is probably the hardest I laughed in any Wes Anderson movie, and that's high praise. So yeah, I really enjoyed The Darjeeling Limited. Alright, number 6, another one of Wes Anderson's most popular movies, Rushmore. This is one of Wes Anderson's first movies. I think it's actually his second film after Bottle Rocket. And I thought that Rushmore was just a ton of fun. Like I said, this is one of Wes's most popular films, and I immediately understood why, because this is a movie that just has very sharp, witty sense of humor, this very quick editing style that I thought was a ton of fun. I immediately recognized why this is one of Wes's most popular films, and it's also a movie with a very fun and absurd story. Essentially, Jason Schwartzman plays the main character who is attending Rushmore University. He feels incredibly misunderstood by all of his classmates. Then he forms a bond with Bill Murray, and the two of them kind of form a bond with each other throughout the movie, where Bill Murray kind of sees Jason Schwartzman as the son that he never had, because Bill Murray actually kind of dislikes the sons that he does have in this movie, and so they kind of form a father-son bond with each other. And then Jason Schwartzman meets a teacher who he develops a crush on, and Bill Murray starts dating that teacher, and so then the two of them get into a crazy prank war with each other. And like I said, I thought that this movie was just very funny. It was very fun. I think Jason Schwartzman in this movie is one of the most fun Wes Anderson protagonists because, to be totally honest, he's kind of just a sociopath in this movie. Like, he is crazy, and I love that. I thought that it was a ton of fun. There are a ton of just very quotable, fun moments in this movie. One of, I think, the most quoted Wes Anderson lines ever is, "I saved Latin. What have you done with your life?" Yeah, it's just a very, very fun movie. I really enjoyed it. I totally understand why people love Rushmore. Number 5, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. The only Wes Anderson movie to get a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes, which, for the record, I think that is insane. Why the heck does this movie have a rotten score? Luckily, since it came out, it has kind of had like this critical reconsensus where people have kind of looked back on it and realized that this is a really good movie. But I don't know how they didn't realize that from the beginning. The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou is so much fun. I enjoyed this movie so much. It has one of the simplest and funniest Wes Anderson movie plots ever, where Bill Murray is this ocean explorer and documentary filmmaker. His best friend is killed by a shark, and so he decides that he wants to go on an adventure to get revenge on the jaguar shark for eating his best friend. And I thought that this movie was very, very funny and very, very fun. I really enjoyed Bill Murray's performance in this movie. It is just peak deadpan Bill Murray comedy. And then the movie also has a very strong emotional core, like a lot of Wes Anderson's movies. Bill Murray meets this fan who is played by Owen Wilson, who reveals that he thinks he is Bill Murray's son. And the movie explores the two of them developing this bond with each other, growing closer together. I really liked that, and it leads to some very, very strong emotional moments later on in this movie. This movie almost made me cry. It is one of only 2 Wes Anderson movies to do that. The other one is higher up on this list. It gets pretty emotional and pretty sad at the end. And there is one scene in this movie, the scene where they actually, spoiler alert, find the jaguar shark, that is my favorite scene in any Wes Anderson movie. That scene was so impactful and so powerful to me. It really hit hard. Other notes, once again, I think this is a very funny movie. They get into a ton of hijinks on their trip where, like, they come across Bill Murray's rival, who's played by Jeff Goldblum. They're attacked by pirates. Just a ton of very, very fun stuff that happens on their journey. Bill Murray's first mate is played by Willem Dafoe, and I thought that he was very, very funny and fun in this movie. It's probably the only Wes Anderson movie where Willem Dafoe doesn't play a villain. I could be wrong about that, but I can't remember another one. And I thought that it was great to see Willem Dafoe not playing a villain, because that's not very common, to be honest. Alright, moving on to number 4. A movie that I think is very, very underrated. The French Dispatch. This is actually one of Wes Anderson's most slept-on movies. A lot of people really don't care for this one, and I honestly just do not understand why. I enjoyed The French Dispatch so much. This is an anthology movie, so I can understand that sometimes people aren't crazy about the anthology format. But the thing is, this is also a movie that is unlike any other movie I have ever seen before. The French Dispatch is a visual newspaper. That is literally what it is. It is a newspaper that you are essentially seeing like visual representations of all of the articles in it. Each story in the anthology is a different article in the newspaper. And that's just really interesting. I have never seen a movie do something like that before. Just how do you even think of that, to be honest? It is an insanely interesting movie. It is an insanely good-looking movie. This is one of Wes Anderson's best-looking movies, in my opinion. It is just so vibrant, so fun. The cinematography is fantastic. All of the stories were fun, in my opinion. My favorite one was the first one, starring Benicio del Toro. I thought that one was a ton of fun, and Adrian Brody is the funniest part of the movie. He plays a supporting character in that Benicio del Toro story, and for some reason, his line delivery in this movie just completely killed me. Yeah, and it's not exactly the deepest and most complex Wes Anderson movie in the world, but it does have some emotional elements to it. The movie does take its time to explore why each of these stories are being told, why each of them are being written, and I thought that it was just a very, very well done film that I think is incredibly underrated. So, this is where this list goes from being pretty hard to being one of the hardest rankings I have ever had to do in my life. Because I am not kidding, all 3 of the top 3 movies on this list are 10 out of 10s for me. That is rare. You don't normally see a ranking list on my channel where I think that 3 of the movies on the list are perfect. But that is what we are faced with here. I think all 3 of Wes Anderson's best movies are perfect, and I had a very hard time choosing between the 3 of them. But ultimately, number 3 ended up being Wes Anderson's most popular movie, Fantastic Mr. Fox. This is the movie that Wes Anderson is really known for. This is his other stop-motion movie, and just like The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, this movie is also based on a Roald Dahl story. This movie is just insane. And I mean that from every perspective. From a visual perspective, it looks so beautiful, so vibrant. Its stop motion is just incredible. It is such a good-looking movie. But it is also an insane movie from a story perspective. The entire film centers around Mr. Fox, who is a former thief who had to give up being a thief to raise a family, but now that he is older and he has a son, he feels like he wants to go back to his life of crime behind his wife's back, and so he goes back out there and starts stealing from farmers once again, and then the farmers decide that they can't have that, so they decide to try and murder this fox by any means necessary. And the lengths that they go to are just insane. Like I said, this is an insane movie. And it is so funny. This movie's comedic timing is incredible. Its writing is incredible. It is just such a funny, quotable movie that I just had so much fun with. I had so much fun with the pure absurdity of this movie's plot. And I also thought that this is another Wes Anderson movie that has a strong emotional core, as it is all about Mr. Fox realizing that he has been taking his family for granted and changing over the course of the movie, growing this dynamic with his son and with his nephew. Like, yeah, I just really, really enjoyed Fantastic Mr. Fox. This is one of the best kids movies that I have ever seen in my life, one of the best animated movies that I have ever seen in my life, and yet Wes Anderson has still made 2 movies that are better than it. Number 2, The Royal Tenenbaums. Of all of Wes Anderson's films, this one is easily the one that hit me the hardest on an emotional level. This movie is all about Gene Hackman, who plays Royal Tenenbaum, the very eccentric father of 3 children who abandoned his family when his children were young, and as a result, they all kind of hate him. And all of his children have just gone on to live very, very sad lives where they're just very, very depressed, broken people as adults. And the movie centers around Royal Tenenbaum, played by Gene Hackman, faking a terminal illness to try and reconnect with all of his kids. That is the plot of this movie. It is a movie that is able to be very funny. It has a very absurd plot. It has a very sharp, witty sense of humor, like all of Wes Anderson's other films. The actors in this movie are just killing it with their delivery of the absurd dialogue. But this is also Wes Anderson's most human and sincere movie to me. I just really, really loved all of the characters in this movie. It is impossible to hate the characters in this movie. Even Royal Tenenbaum, who is just not a good person for most of this film, he is just so funny and so open with his flaws that it is just so hard to dislike him. I just really connected with every character in this movie, and as the movie goes on and you have this family breaking down their wounds, reconnecting with each other, forming a bond with their father once again, I thought that it was just so powerful. There are lines towards the end of this movie that really, really almost got to me. Like, this is a very, very emotionally effective film. The performances of Gene Hackman, Gwyneth Paltrow, Luke Wilson, and then in particular Ben Stiller are all just amazing. It's an amazing movie. I love Royal Tenenbaums. And this is Wes Anderson's 3rd movie, I believe. After I watched this one, I remember thinking, there's just no way that any of these movies could possibly top this one. This is going to be number 1 on my ranking. And then I watched The Grand Budapest Hotel. This is Wes Anderson's best movie. I said that it was hard to choose between the top 3, but to be totally honest, as soon as I watched The Grand Budapest Hotel, I kind of knew that this was going to be number 1, because this movie is one of the most fun movies that I have ever watched in my life. This film is just delightful. It is so funny, so vibrant, so ridiculous. It is just such a fantastic movie. The plot of The Grand Budapest Hotel centers around Ralph Fiennes, who is a worker at a hotel who gets framed for the murder of one of his guests, and so the movie centers around Ralph Fiennes and his protege, the hotel's lobby boy, Tony Revolori, teaming up to go on this absurd adventure to prove his innocence. And everything about this movie is just Wes Anderson style perfected. It is so sharp, it is so quick, and I had a blast with it. I really, really loved the connection that is formed in this movie between Ralph Fiennes and Tony Revolori. Even this movie, which is one of Wes Anderson's most absurd films, has a very strong emotional connection. And there was nothing in this movie that made me cry, but there was a moment halfway through the movie involving an argument between Ralph Fiennes and Tony Revolori, where that scene ended in a really wholesome way that made me just say out loud, "Aww," like, this movie is just so special. It is so good, and it is easily Wes Anderson's best movie, in my opinion. That's the ranking. That is my ranking of every Wes Anderson movie. I really do mean it when I say Wes Anderson is now one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Because, like, how do you even do this? How do you make 13 movies and not have a single one that I thought was outright bad? I mean, once again, one of the two that I said was just okay is Asteroid City, which I didn't really care for simply because I didn't understand what it was trying to say. Wes Anderson just has such an insanely good track record. And yeah, that was my ranking of all of his movies. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below, what is your favorite Wes Anderson movie? And see ya, movie fans.